Ask Earl Anything, number 10. So I'm going to jump right into the questions. I got a lot of good questions this week. You can see I'm rocking a cold, so my voice is a little weird. I'm going to start with, in no particular order, these questions. I'll start with Jeff. Jeff Holden wrote, drummer Jeff, it used to be known as, how do I get that really fat woody tone on my snares on all my videos? Also, can you tell us a little bit about your green Vista lights? Alright, well, my chain that I use for recording my snare drum. First off, to get a woody tone out of a snare drum, you gotta have a good wood snare drum. A lot of my videos I use my 7x14 DMR walnut, solid walnut snare drum. But he was talking about all my videos. A lot of my recent videos have had my cast aluminum snare drum, my 6.5x14 cast aluminum DMR snare drum. And I've been using a lot of this Black Beauty snare drum that I have today up here, 5x14 Black Beauty Ludwig. So I think he's talking about how I must be EQing it and stuff. Let me give you a little bit about my plug-in chain to give you a picture of that, okay? I record usually just with using an SM57 on the top. Every once in a while, if I'm doing like an album project, I may use another 57 on the bottom or a condenser mic on the bottom, okay? When I was using the jazz kit on the 7x14 snare drum, I was actually using an Octava MK 012. So that's kind of a condenser mic. So it's not really necessarily the mic that does it. It's probably more the preamp. The preamp I run my snare in is a N72, a 7-circle audio N72 preamp. Now, 7-circle audio makes boutique preamps. And the way they make them is they sell them as kits. And these have been around since the early 2000s. And a friend of mine, Steve Cruz, who helped me with my wife's album, had some of these mic pre's. And this was about 2005 or 6, I guess it was. After we did my wife's album, I bought my first 7-circle audio mic pre's. I've not ever been dissatisfied with these mic pre's. Now, I did not build the kit pre's. I actually had somebody else build them. Actually, I bought my first set were J99s, which are the John Hardy copies, which I use for my overheads. And they were built by the person that bought the kit the first time. They did a great job. And the second set, the N72 and the A12, which I bought myself, I had another guy build out of Nashville that builds 7-circle audio preamps. He did a great job. So I think a lot of my snare sound initially comes through the mic and then the mic pre. Now, inside Logic, which is the DAW I use, my chain is this. I have a normal Logic EQ, which is a graphic EQ. And I use something called refresh snare as kind of the starting point. Now I don't mess with that too much. And then I bring in a universal audio plugin called Pultec, not the Pultec Pro, but the Pultec EQ, which is not the Pro. The Pro's got another mid-range set in there. I use the Pro too, but not on the snare. And I use a setting called Present Snare as my starting point. When you use plugins on any channel of your DAW, it's good to use the presets that sound right to you, but then you got to tweak them. So every time I do a drum cover, what I do is I actually use the preset and then I go in and I tweak. And I tweak boost and attenuation. That's the cool thing about the Pultec. If you ever saw a real Pultec EQ, it's got a knob that says boost, it's got a knob that says attenuation, and you can actually be on the lower frequencies like 60 Hertz and you can boost it and you can also attenuate at the same time. That was one of the interesting things about this particular piece of gear. Well, the universal audio version of this does this very well. So a lot of times what I find is once I use the preset I usually go to, which is present snare usually, sometimes I'll use punch, I'll basically adjust the boost and the attenuation to my ears. Okay? The only other thing I have in that chain is a compressor, and it's a stock Logic compressor which is set for snare drum, and I set it up and I get that and then I adjust my volume. And I think a lot of times what you hear in the mix for snare drum is the overheads, because a lot of times my overheads are higher in the mix than my snare drum mic. So I think those are the contributing factors to getting a great snare sound. I like to use the room sound. Now, I don't have room mics in here because, number one, I've got a low ceiling. My ceiling's probably about just 8 foot, if that, maybe 7.5. It's a garage ceiling. So I don't have a high ceiling I'm dealing with. But I think that I do use room mics once in a while, but not on drum videos. My drum videos are made lean and mean. As a matter of fact, I have another question on here which pretty much asked how I make my drum videos, and I may actually do a whole segment on making drum videos sometime, because it goes into deeper than just the EQ and that kind of stuff. It actually asks what's my process for making a video. So I don't know if I'm going to get that fully in this video or not today. We'll see. Anyhow, Jeff, I hope that answers that question. The green Vista light story. I've owned 2 Vista light kits in my lifetime. The first was a blue Vista light that my grandmother bought me when I was 15 years old. And the reason I got the blue Vista light kit was, and it was a blue Vista light Hollywood kit, because it had the flat bass stands and had an 8x12, 9x13, 16x16 floor tom, 14x22 inch bass, and then a 5x14 Vista light snare. I eventually added a 5.5x8 and a 6.5x10. I once said that wrong on a video. I said a 6 and an 8. It was actually an 8 and a 10. And I knew it was an 8 and a 10. And don't ask me why I said it wrong. I just did. But I didn't correct it. So 8, 10, 12, 13, 16. And I bought that. I had that set up when I was 17 years old in my first band called Seaside East. And loved the Vista light kit. So I went to college. And when I pulled my Vista light kit out in college with a bunch of jazzers, they laughed their rear ends off at it. And it was my quest in my summer between freshman and sophomore year to buy a drum kit, which is the kit you see here. This Gretsch kit is what I bought. And I eventually sold the blue Vista light kit to one of the other guys in college, a guy named Perry White. And I sold it to him for a Vista light, the Vista light kit, and some money, which wasn't a lot of money, by the way. And he also gave me this beat up Stewart kit. You know, it was a Stewart kit that I did some weird things to and turned into concert toms and used in a church for a while. That's a long story. So I got rid of my Vista light kit pretty young. I was probably by 1979, by the end of 79, I'd gotten rid of my Vista light kit. So I had it from 75 to 79. Fast forward to I'm on a road trip with my kids in Sharon, Pennsylvania. Now Sharon, Pennsylvania is on the border of Ohio and Pennsylvania, off of I-80, excuse me. So we're on I-80, Interstate 80, and we're meeting up with some friends from Michigan, and it's the halfway point between both of us. And we stayed at a Radisson hotel there that had a pool, and our kids played together, and we had a weekend together. And it was kind of fun. And we were going out to lunch, and my son sees this sign that says "World's Largest Shoe Store." And he goes, "We got to go to the world's largest shoe store." So we drove to the world's largest shoe store, which I had no interest in. And across the street was a little music store called King's Music. And I said, "You guys go in the shoe store, I'm going in the music store." Walked in the music store, and King's Music was basically a small music store that sold brass instruments, guitars, and basses, and had 2 drum kits. One was a CP, Cosmic Percussion drum kit, really cheap piece of junk for about 500 bucks. And then I walked in and had a green Vista light kit sitting there. And this tag on the green Vista light kit said $3.99. And I just freaked. I was like, $3.99. Now this is 1997, the beginning of eBay, okay, the very beginning of eBay. And I was following vintage drums at this point, and I knew Vista lights were worth something. I knew it was worth probably about 800 bucks at that point. And they're selling it for 400. So I came out of the music store and dragged my wife over. I said, "They got a green Vista light kit." Now the Vista light kit was 8x12, 9x13, 16x16, 14x22, 5x14 snare, 2 flat bass stands, flat bass hi-hat stand, or not flat bass, but the Sherlock cheaper one, and flat bass snare stand, Speed King pedal, an 18-inch ride cymbal, Cajun ride cymbal, 15-inch Zildjian New Beat hi-hats, which I hated. I didn't like the way they sounded at all. But all this together, $399. And I looked at my wife, I said, we gotta buy this kit. I could sell it for more than what it's worth right here. I can break it up and sell it for all kinds of money. So we bought the kit, and I remember we picked it up on the Monday morning, and because we paid for it then, but we came back Monday morning, picked up the kit, pushed the kids up in the minivan, and shoved these drums in, and off to New Jersey we went. I had that kit till about 2000, I don't know, 2010 or 11, I guess I sold it, somewhere around there. Matter of fact, I sold that Vista Lite kit to get my other 7-circle audio mic pre's, the N72 and the A12. So that's the story of the Vista Lite kit. I love Vista Lite drums. They don't sound that great, but I love them. This was my first kit. And why did I buy a Vista Lite kit? Because I saw Karen Carpenter and the Carpenters when I was 14 years old at the Garden State Arts Center. And she had a clear Vista Lite kit, and Cubby O'Brien, the other drummer for the Carpenters, had this multi-band or some kind of swirled Vista Lite, blue, clear Vista Lite kit. And it left an impression on me, and I bought it. Anyhow, that's the Vista Lite story. Hope that helps you with the woody tone. I think having a good wood snare drum also helps. The next question is from Drumman190. He said, you said you're really into Chicago, but what are your top 5 bands and songs to play? I would say Chicago is definitely a band that I love. So they're like one of my top 5 bands for sure. Who the other top 5 bands are? Wow, that's a tough question. Tower Power is a band I love. I aspire to play David Garibaldi style, but I don't play it. I try. I have a lot of his influence on my playing, I think. I love Steely Dan and all the drummers that are of Steely Dan. But I can't say if there was a favorite song of Steely Dan, I couldn't name it for you. Wow, I like a lot of jazz guys. I love Weather Report. I think Weather Report's great, especially Heavy Weather and Black Market. Chester Thompson, Alex Acuna, Jocko, even up into the Peter Erskine era and the Omar era, Omar Hakim. Actually, all the drummers of Weather Report are amazing. You know, you go all the way back to Eric Kravitz. I mean, they're all great players. As far as music to play, I think you're seeing me play the music I love to play. I just love playing any kind of music. I just love music. So it's kind of hard for me to pigeonhole myself. Stylistically, you can tell I'm more of a pop music guy. But 70s, 80s pop music, that's pretty much my thing. The newer music, there's certain guys I really like. You know, I listen to some newer music that I like, but nothing makes me want to listen to it all the time. You know, I usually listen for drummers, to be honest. There's certain drummers that if I find they're playing on somebody's album, I'll listen to it. Like if I can find somebody's using Jim Keltner on something, I'll follow that and find that album. There's an album called Little Village that Jim Keltner's on. He's in the band of that band with John Hyatt, and it's a great album. Great album. Another guy, another underrated drummer that doesn't get talked about a lot is the guy from Little Feat, Richie Hayward, who died in 2011. Amazing drummer, and he's had a big influence on my style too, I think. He does a lot of the ghost notes and a lot of that Louisiana backbeat funky thing that he does. The Meters, Zigaboo and the Meters. I did a cover of the Meters, Sissy Strut, but you should just go back and get them. If there's one album I would tell guys that want to play funk should get, is the very best of the Meters. Go on Spotify, get the very best of the Meters, and listen to it. This guy is so funky, it's not even funny. He is funky, and I love funky drummers. I mean, I think Garibaldi was influenced by Zigaboo, for sure. Great drumming. So New Orleans drumming is something I really like. I like listening to. Stanton Moore stuff's cool. But you can't pigeonhole me. I just can't be pigeonholed into like, I like just this or just that. I like everything, and I listen to lots of music. And there's one drummer I always try to find music from, which is Vinnie Colaiuta. I'll never play Vinnie Colaiuta. I wish I could. I wish I had those chops, but boy oh boy, I love listening to Vinnie play. And the joy of Vinnie playing drums. When you watch him with Sting. Oh man, just amazing. Manu Katché is another guy. Forget it. Manu Katché is one of the best drummers that out there. Manu played with Sting, but Manu Katché with on the Dire Straits album or on Sowing the Seeds of Love by Tears for Fear. Oh, Manu Katché is on fire. Or Robbie Robertson's album, the one that made in the 80s that Manu played on. His use of splash cymbals, amazing. So I tend to find groups that I like to watch because I love the drummer. That's one of the reasons why I follow things. Anyhow, William, I hope that answered that question. That's all I can say. But it was kind of hard. That's a hard question. By the way, here comes a question with Vinny and Manu's in the question. So this is from Robert Cozart. Do you use cymbals more for wash and sustain or punctuation of musical ideas? A framework for my question is the approach of Abe Laboriel Jr. versus Manu Katché or Vinny Colaiuta. Now, let me explain. I love splash cymbals. Matter of fact, I got a whole bunch of splash cymbals. And at one point in time, being Stuart Copeland or doing those Vinny splashes was really cool. But I think music has changed, okay? And about 2000... I've been playing a lot of churches for the last 10 years. A lot of churches, a lot of big churches. A lot of churches where you play with tracks and clicks and all that stuff. And when you're playing in churches, the thing was to go into bigger cymbals. For years, I had smaller cymbals. I used to have lots of little splashes and lots of little crash cymbals. 16 was a common size crash cymbal for me. Having a bigger cymbal started in the 2000s, really. Up until 2002, I never had a crash cymbal bigger than 18 inches. In 2002, I picked up a Sabian AAX 19-inch studio crash, which was the biggest crash I had up until that point. I never got a 20-inch crash until 2013 when I bought the 20-inch 505 Paiste Danny Gottlieb cymbal. So over the last 5-7 years, I've been buying bigger cymbals, ride cymbals. I never had a 22-inch ride cymbal until I bought a Carope. All my ride cymbals, the biggest ride cymbal I ever had was a 21-inch. My first ride cymbal was a Rock 21, a Zildjian, which I didn't like that much. Most of my ride cymbals were small cymbals. My main ride cymbal for most of the 80s and 90s was a Sabian HH 19-inch medium heavy ride. And where did that come from? It came from Steve Gadd. Steve Gadd used to use an 18-inch crash and an 18-inch ride. So I've been influenced by smaller, punchier cymbals, is what I'm saying. But as music styles change and environments change, I was playing in this church in 2012 through 15 where I didn't play more than 3 cymbals. I didn't have a China. You know, I rarely brought a China, let's put it that way. And I started buying bigger cymbals. The 22-inch Carope, the 24-inch Giant Beat, the 20-inch Paiste Crash. You know, I started going bigger cymbals because that church thing became those bigger cymbals. And none of these punchy little splashes. That was kind of corny. You know, it's almost as bad as bringing a set of wind chimes out. By the way, I have wind chimes. And by the way, also I just want to let you all know, I think they're called wind chimes. You can also call them mark trees. Okay, some guys like to call them chimes. I always call them wind chimes. And I have a set of them in my yard, so they are really wind chimes in my house because they blow in the wind. It's one of a set of CPs. I've got 3 or 4 sets of wind chimes, but you never see them on my kit very much because they're so overdone for a while there. Everybody had a set of wind chimes somewhere. Okay? But anyhow, so I've been going more the Abe Laboriel big cymbal thing, but I also have enough cymbals and enough of the smaller cymbals to understand the Manu Katché, Vinny Colaiuta small cymbal splash punches thing. So I use both techniques in the covers, and it all depends on the song. The song Down Under I just did, that song had a lot of little splashes in it in the style of Stuart Copeland and Jerry, what was his name? I think his name was Jerry Spicer, I think his name was, for Men at Work. He had a cool kit. He had a bunch of little 6, 8, 10 double-headed toms and then 12, 13 pearl drum kit. And he had all these little splashes. He was splashing all over the place. So when I did that Men at Work cover, I was going for his thing, what I remember of him, you know, on MTV. So I think I do both. I don't have a preference, to be honest. I will say this, if stylistically a splash doesn't make sense to do, you won't find it there. If a splash makes sense, I'll put it in a song, you know. It's just funny, this has been in my last 5 videos, so. But I haven't hit it on all those videos, it's just there. Usually I take away the things I don't need in a video. Robert asked another question. By the way, ask as many questions as you want. Don't be afraid to ask questions. I don't want anybody to ever feel offended that if I use your question every week, you know, for 5 weeks in a row. Don't get upset about that. I appreciate everybody asks the questions. You guys make this show the show it is. Robert Cozart also asked me a question. When do you think a drum head should be changed? And then he had a nice comment after that. Drum heads, well, if you've got a drum head endorsement, you can do it every week, you know, after every gig. If you're a working guy like me, I try to change my tom heads once a year, once every 9-10 months. Snare heads, well, if you've got only one snare drum, you're going to change your snare heads a lot more often. Because I've got 10 snare drums, I rotate snare drums. So I'll sometimes go a year before I change a snare head, just because of that. Matter of fact, a lot of times when I take a head off, it's really not done. And a lot of the older guys, like Charlie Watts and even Steve Jordan, those guys will leave heads on drums forever. Once they get that sound and it has a certain sound, they won't mess with it. So I tend to do that these days because I don't want to spend bazillions of dollars on drum heads. But if a drum head doesn't have the sound anymore, you got to change it. And then when a new head goes on, it just adds life. And by the way, the Black Beauty's been up because I changed the drum head. And since I changed the drum head, it kind of brought a new life to it. Plus I changed the rims from die-cast to triple flange, and it really opened the drum up again. This one's from Mike Frazano. New guy, he's been following me. Hi Mike, thank you for asking a question. You ask a great question here. This is a question. The rims mount, the mount on your 12-inch Gretsch tom in this video, which was last week's Ask Earl Anything, this one right here, appears to be an old Pearl style mount on the rim system, but the stand appears to be an Yamaha ball style, or Yamaha style ball mount. I obsess stuff like that. Did I do a custom mod? Now, I'm going to give you the real answer to this. There's a yes and a no to this, and I'll tell you why there's a yes and a no to this. No, it's not a custom mod because Gibraltar sells this, okay? But yes, because, let me give you the real story. I bought a bunch of tom mounts, 7/8 tom mounts last year on eBay. There were 5 of them came in a pack, okay? 5 of these tom arms for 44 bucks. I saw it, nobody was buying this, there was a bunch of them. Now I knew that there might be a problem with these things because my son-in-law has a Yamaha kit, and this looks exactly like the new Yamaha tom mounts, which are having really bad problems, by the way. Okay? But I bought it for 44 bucks. I mean, you can get one 7/8 tom mount for 25 bucks. Maybe 50 bucks, depending on where you buy it. Just one, depending on the type. So I looked at that, I said, I'm buying these. And I bought them, they got shipped to my house. And there was 2 of these. Well, I put them on my kit, and I was using them. And then they started slipping. And they started slipping hard. And these are so poorly made, it's not even funny, these Gibraltar tom mounts. So I do not recommend anybody buy these things. But if you've bought one and it's slipping, and it's gotten to the point where it actually, because there's these little screws that screw into the metal, and these screws have got a locking washer on it, they eventually strip. Because you're tightening down on it, and they strip on the bottom, and then they fall out, and then the tom arm just pops. Both of my arms did that within the first 6-7 months of having it. I found out a fix. This is why I said it is customized. Because when you look at this right here, what I have is 2 screws. And what I did with the 2 screws was I drilled right through this hole to the bottom, and I put a complete screw with a Phillips head on it, and a couple nuts on the bottom and a locking washer. And I did the same on this side, and I tightened it down on it. Okay? And the only part that's the same that's still in there is the back piece. And if this ever strips, I will be drilling a hole through that with a drill bit and putting another screw in. And that's how you fix these tom mounts. If you have a Yamaha style with the same strip, you can fix the tom mount that way. So that's something I discovered. Somebody was talking about it on some forum, I forget where, and they said they did this and it worked. So this is a customized Gibraltar 7/8 mount. It was not, the 7/8 part was already Gibraltar, they already did it. The other thing you'll notice is this looks like a Yamaha piece, because it is a Yamaha piece. I took it from a Yamaha tom mount. The Gibraltar one stripped on the top, so I got rid of that. So yes, this looks very customized. You have got great eyes, Mike, to see that. So that's all I can say. That's the story behind the tom mount. The next thing you said, what are the long black cymbal sleeves without the wing nut? Okay. Let me see what they're called. There's a name for these. I hope it's written on it. I bought this at Sam Ash. This is called Cymbal Crown. That's what they're called. Cymbal Crown. And basically it's rubber, patent pending. Now I will tell you this about the cymbal crown. I've had it about 5-6 years now. The cymbal does start to wear it, so I don't know when this is going to break off one day. But if you get 7, 8, 10 years out of this thing, it's worth it. And the way it works is you take the whole assembly off, and then you put this on, and you screw down. And it's got a little pinch point on it, and it allows you to let your cymbals just fly freely. So it goes on like that. Cymbal Crown is what they're called. I think they cost about 10, 12 bucks. But they're a lifesaver versus doing what I'm doing on this one, which is just letting it fly freely. Now ride cymbals is not as big a deal, but crash cymbals do bounce up once in a while. And when they bounce up, they could bounce off. So I like having quick release on and off. That's one of my things. All right, Mike? So I think I got it. Brian Corey asked a question. I want to make sure I get to Brian Corey's question. He asked, how do you clean traditional finished cymbals? Well, first off, I don't usually clean cymbals very often. I have cleaned cymbals, but cleaning cymbals can be a real problem. It takes logos off and things like that. The cymbal's got to be really nasty dirty for me to want to clean it. I will say with this china, I got a friend of mine gave me a pack of a Sonar drum kit, care kit, and it had some cleaning fluid on it and a little paste kind of cleaner, and I put it on it and I kind of cleaned it off. Then I put the shiny spray stuff, which is kind of like cymbal goose juice or whatever they call that stuff that it sprays on. Put it on and cleaned it off that way. I try not to clean my cymbals. That's not what I do. Most of my cymbals look new because they're kind of new, actually. My B20 cymbals, my Zildjians, I don't clean those. I would stay away from trying to clean the Caropes, I'll tell you that right now, because they'll mess that finish right up. Same thing with the Paiste finishes. All the cymbal manufacturers today put a light coat of lacquer on it, on the cymbals, that keeps the shine for a long period of time. So as soon as you start cleaning them, you take the lacquer off, and eventually that takes off the labels and everything else. The interesting thing about the Giant Beats is the Giant Beats actually are the color of the 2002s, because it's that B8 bronze, but they've got some kind of a coating on it, this green coating, and over time they start turning this color, and one day all my Giant Beats will be like this gets played so much, it's starting to get the copper color starting to come out. So you're starting to see the copper come out and the green's going away. But it's happening by natural design, because the more I play it, the more it comes out that way. But I don't generally clean cymbals. I don't recommend it. But if you were a cymbal cleaning guy, be careful. Whatever cymbal cleaner you buy, it can take your logos off. Okay? There's some crazy videos out there. If you want to try something crazy, put ketchup on it. Or you could probably try to clean it with Coca-Cola. And by the way, it probably would work. Coke can clean acid off of batteries, so trust me, Coke can clean a lot of stuff. I don't know why we drink Coke, right? I don't, for the most part, unless it's got rum in it. Well, so that's another discussion. I won't go there. Todd Morsey asks the question, do I use a postage scale for weighing cymbals? And then Zach Drums said to me, why do I weigh cymbals? Okay, so let's talk about weighing cymbals first. This is the scale I use for weighing cymbals. This is actually a food scale, a Cuisinart food scale. And once you set it down, you turn it on, it has a tare, and it basically goes to 0 grams, and then you put your cymbal on and you weigh your cymbals. Why do I weigh the cymbals? Actually, I believe Todd actually answered the question really well. The reason why I weigh the cymbals is so if I'm buying a cymbal online, I want to know if the cymbal's heavy or not. I like thinner cymbals. I know when I see a ride cymbal that's a 22 and it says in 3,000 plus grams, that's a little too heavy for me. So that tips me off that it's a heavier ride cymbal. If I see crash cymbals in certain weight ranges, I know that they're heavier than what I want. So the reason I weigh cymbals is to get a determination of the sounds I want and the weight range of a cymbal I want. And that helps me to figure out if it's the sound I'm going for. Now you still have to hit the cymbal and see if it's the sound. But generally, if it doesn't have that, I generally go for thinner cymbals. That's my new thing. Because I kind of like the wash and the spread of thinner cymbals. On a thinner crash cymbal, you get more punch. On a bigger cymbal that's thinner, you get more spread and wash. Okay? But I use that scale to weigh it for that purpose. That's the purpose of weighing cymbals. Now, Zach, you asked a couple other questions in here. You actually asked a question about, you wrote it this way. Have you ever disputed a blocked cover from YouTube? Okay, that was the next question. Not on YouTube. I have not disputed a blocked cover on YouTube. I think YouTube pretty much knows, they're probably the pros at this, but I will tell you, if you get blocked on Facebook, try disputing it. You'll probably win. Facebook and Instagram you'll win, and I learned that from Johnson drummer Michael Johnson told me this. He said every time on Instagram he gets knocked, for the copyright, he disputes it and they put it on. Same thing with Facebook, I found. If you basically get blocked on Facebook, you can dispute it, and if you say it's yours, they'll put it on. Now, here's the reason why it is yours, by the way. We have fair usage rights for educational purposes, and when I post onto my Drum Talk drum channel on Facebook, it's my drum lesson site. So I'm using it as educational purposes. Whenever I make a drum cover, it's for educational purposes. I can't monetize it. If they want to put videos, if they want to put ads on my covers, go ahead. I can't do anything about it. Alright? So they're making money off of that video, so what does it matter to them? I can't figure this out. But apparently it does matter on YouTube for certain artists. The Eagles do not want their videos played. Either does Paul Simon, apparently. But that's the answer to that question. I will not dispute YouTube. I will fight probably with Facebook or Instagram. I've learned that does work. And Zach, you had another great question. And you said, I like your approach to doing drum covers. Do you listen to the song in the car as well to learn it? Zach, since this is the last question, what I'm going to do here is tell you that I'm going to make a video about my approach to making drum covers. That is such a good question that I could probably spend 20 minutes on that question. And I have some really good thoughts about making drum covers and why I make drum covers the way I do. So rather than put it in Ask Earl Anything this week, I'm going to make a separate video this weekend of it and probably post it in the next week to come. So Zach, the other question will be answered when I put that video out. So thank you for the inspiration for that. Anyhow, guys, hope you enjoy this version of Ask Earl Anything. As I said before, you guys make the questions. That's what makes this show work. So you ask questions, we have a show. You don't ask questions, I don't have a show. This week we had a lot of questions. Thank you. Thank everybody that contributed a question. Hopefully I answered the questions. Please leave comments. Please leave new questions for next week. And be looking out for that video about how I make drum covers and why I make them the way I do. Coming out in the next week. Hopefully before the next version of Ask Earl Anything. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great day. Bye.